record show.
And co-host Marine Corps Map, coming to you on Monday and Tuesdays in Studio A, noon to 2 Eastern.
And Studio B on Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. Eastern, with educational, instructional, information, and situational updates, often with wonderful guests on the current landscape in the U.S. and overseas.
This is a go.
We are with you, side to side, and back to back.
Please join us on Monday through Wednesdays,
as well as other hosts and guests here on Revolution Radio.
We're not gonna take it anymore. That's right, we're not gonna take it anymore. We said we're not gonna take it anymore. That's right, we're not gonna take it anymore.
I'm Reverend Medium Tracy Lockwood, and I'd like to invite you to join me as I discuss life from a medium's perspective. I'll be talking about insights that I've gained through readings, with topics like your guides, angels, animal communication, past lives, our transition, and the afterlife. We'll take a deeper look at the metaphysical meanings of symbols and totems, and I'll give you some practical exercises to help you develop your own natural psychic ability. Join me on From a Medium's Perspective.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Well, it's time to stumble down the road with host Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff and co-host Jenny Vaught as they carry stones, dig holes, and wield their shovels along the way. On Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. This is not a seated event. As they talk, run, stumble, carry, dig, drag, laugh, fight, sing and pray, dance and kick and scream, and oftentimes fall. Hey, is that a stone or a buffalo check? Now, here are your hosts for the next 2 hours on carrying stones and digging holes. But I won't be there.
The hell I won't.
Hey everybody, this is your host, Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff, and you are listening to Revolution Radio Station and Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show. You can find information about the show if you go to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and you go to Studio A, you look at the schedule, and you go to Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you will see our show. It has the big bee with lots of pollen on it flying towards the flower. So also, too, while you're there, we also need donations. We are 100% listener supported. And we also now have really good prices on large banner advertising that you can go check out on the site. And also, you can also buy a lot of heirloom seeds that you can get packages that can last for a long time. So if you are a prepper and you need some seeds, or you're thinking you might want to do some prepping with everything that's going on, you may want to get your seeds. So if you think about it, get your seeds through us. It can help support us and our station. Anyway, so I have a bit of an announcement. It has been a bit of a crazy week. I know that a lot of, with Uranus being involved with the whole eclipse that happened yesterday, everything was kind of explosive here on the West Coast. Everything's on fire. And I just want to say, for people out there, one of the things that I got intuitively yesterday I went up to go camping at a friend of mine's house, a native friend of mine, and up at Eagle Lake in California, up above Susanville. And I was there 2 hours, and we were evacuated because of a fire that had just started, and 2 firefighters had already lost their life. So we were mandatory evacuated right out of there. So I ended up having to drive home. And then there's this other big fire right up in there, a really big fire that they're trying to put everybody on. So one of the things that, I really thought about when I kind of opened myself up was, the bad guys have kind of moved from the false flag. And remember, in false flags, people do get hurt. Average people do get hurt in the false flags. But they've moved, it seems like to me, from false flag shooting episodes to lighting everything on fire. And when I was driving up there on the mainstream radio, they talked about a guy that they just arrested for lighting 9 fires in California. So, it's still the same game that they're playing. And they're using different kinds of things. So if you're awake and aware, pay attention to the environment. Don't allow things to get burned down. Don't allow our forests or areas where we may need to collect food out of, where animals need to live, things that help our planet. We can't live without trees. We can't live without oxygen. So, be aware in your environment. You see somebody doing something that you don't think is right, get somebody there immediately. Don't let especially if you see a small fire, call in immediately, and don't let those fires get totally out of control where they're killing people, killing lots of animals, and destroying our planet. So that's just what I have to say about that. Okay, so the big announcement today is that, and I kind of had to pray over it quite a bit before I announce our guest. There was a situation that involved Janie, my co-host, and I don't really want to go into the whole thing or what I think it is or what I believe, blah, 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 blah. Not going to go into that. But I just wanted to let my listeners know that Janie has basically fired herself from the show. So through a pretty, psychotic break, I think. I'm not really sure. But anyway, so I'm going to leave it at that. So from here on out, you're going to have me as the main co-host, and then I'm going to have guests. And then I'm also going to be actually having people come on and co-host the show, lots of different interesting people. So that's what's happening in the future. So I'm sorry if that really wrecks your day. It's been a pretty crazy week for me. So I'm doing a 4:20 morning this morning to get myself on the happy bus. Anyway, so we're going to move forward. So today I have a guest, and just want to let people know off the bat, we're going to go into some of the past history or whatever else, but we're not going to get stuck there. And we're not going to get stuck in a lot of the negative. And we're going to just look at it a lot as just information that's being presented. And then we'll go from there. But we have a lot of other amazing topics, he and I, to talk about on the show. So I met Bear, and I'm going to call him Bear. I'm going to call him by his spirit name, Medicine Bear Whitebow. That's who I know. I don't know the Bear from the past. I know Bear from the moment that he decided to step forward and start coming out of the darkness. And he found me, and I went to a ceremony that he had in his house at Pahrump. So we're also kind of connected spiritually through the ceremony and stuff like that, which makes, our relationship, all my relations, it just makes it a little bit more important and valuable. So Bear and I, since I think it was like in April 2009 or something when he had the ceremony, both him and I have, been walking a rocky road, trying to find balance, finding ourselves in the process and moving out into the world, in a completely different way. So we're going to talk about some of that as well. All right. And if Bear chooses to tell you what his birth corporation name is, then he'll do that. But if he chooses not to, because we're trying to hold it at a higher elevation, which means we want him to talk from more of his spirit self, his now self and his future self versus his past self, because we don't want to trigger anybody, and we don't want to be triggered today. So anyway, all right, Mr. And I'm going to refer to him as Bear. during the course of our conversation. So the only place, and we'll put this out there just at the beginning, and Bear did a really lengthy interview on the really dark subject of his past as MKUltra and military and all the things that went along with that with Randy's show. Bear, do you want to, what's Randy's name, his last name?
Randy Moggins.
So he's on YouTube and he has his own show. So, if you want to go there and look that up, the interview was with a guy named John Storm and Randy. So if you want to go back there and look at like all the dirty details, you can go ahead and do that. But we're just going to ask Bear to talk about a little bit of his past from when he was little and kind of up until he gets to the now. And then we'll just go with it from there. All right, Bear, you're on.
Thanks for having me on. My story is not very unique as far as how everything came about and started. I was adopted at birth. For whatever reason, birth mother had issues back in the late 60s when I was born, and so I was put up for adoption, and I've got genetic characteristics that are, how does one want to put it, favorable for the so-called illumined ones, dark art people, and as a result of the genetic traits that I carry, this family chose to adopt me and raise me as their own, and out of respect mainly for myself and to some degree to keep them out of it. I will reserve the right to hold on to the birth name I was given for now. You know what it is. Feel free to put it into the description later, and anybody wants to look me up through that, they can. But I don't associate myself with that family anymore, and haven't for a number of years. But for me, it all started probably close to about the age of 6. Was indoctrinated into the programs, brought into things. My route started in California, down in the area of Los Angeles, transferring up into the Presidio area under the guidance of the program director at the time, which was Michael Aquino, who I'm sure many people are aware of Colonel Aquino's background and Luciferian and the church that he started and all that kind of good stuff. So that's pretty much where things started. And my attitude started with a program called Project Talent, where they were fine-tuning to try and find out what my aptitudes were and where I could best be utilized and fit in. Wound up being indoctrinated into a program called MKUltra, which is an offshoot of the original program, which is the Phoenix program. And the Phoenix program has gone through transformations over the years since its inception in the late 50s. And obviously, most people probably relate to what that was like during the Vietnam conflict, which was the assassination program and wet work program. And later, as things progressed over the years into the mid 80s, or late 70s, it got transferred into what is now known as the MKUltra program, which is basically wet work assassination. And anything else you want me to go into on that, or is that pretty much touch base on it?
This is your show. you, if you're done talking about it, we're going to be done talking about it.
Oh, like we've talked about offline. I don't really see the benefit in rehashing all of the horror and trauma and everything that's gone on. Anybody that's interested in that wants to get in touch with me, I'll be more than happy. But there's already interviews on me regarding that. Like you've referenced John Storm, who's a good friend of mine, a mentor, and one of my previous instructors. I don't really see the benefit in all of that. That as far as the MKUltra program goes, there's been 20 plus years of people speaking out, and another good friend of mine who's probably more well known than anybody out there is Duncan O'Finian, and the story is pretty much universal as to what we've all been through. I think what's more beneficial is what's happened since the reintegration, the putting together the personalities, the breaking down of the compartmentalization, going through the false memories versus the real memories, and coming to terms with all that, which, as you're probably aware of, and some of your listeners are, that's a very difficult process to go through. It takes a lot of therapy. It takes a lot of intestinal fortitude. It takes a lot of spiritual work. And fortunately for me, being able to draw on my bloodlines and the spiritual background that I've also been given, thankfully, I've been able to do all that and integrate and heal on many, many levels. And I still have a ways to go, as do all of us. Every day is a process, and every day is an opportunity to grow and heal a little bit deeper and peel away another layer of the onion and find a higher truth. And basically what I do today is anything from the past, if it benefits today and how I can help somebody else or help myself and to heal, then I'll dive into it. If it's just a matter of bringing it up for general conversation, I tend to avoid it.
Okay, so do you want to talk about? Okay, so one of the components is the Red Road, right? Because I know
Correct.
you. So do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because I, have a feeling like most of us, when we get back on the Red Road or we find the Red Road, our lives really start to turn away, or not turn away, but, change and transmute and move forward. And we start to turn away from our past, healing it and then moving forward. So do you want to talk about like when you first started kind of discovering, getting back on the Red Road, and then, moving into the sobriety part, just to give people an idea of, the importance of that transition?
Well, for me, I've had several medicine teachers over the years. One of my very first ones was a gentleman by the name of Standing Eagle, and that was in my formative years where I was also introduced to that. The difference being is that I was introduced from, and the Apache term for it is Bruja medicine, which was dark medicine, black magic medicine, and being trained in how to utilize that. And that's pretty self-explanatory as to the approach that they were trying to gear me towards. I was indoctrinated into that, learned everything I was supposed to learn in that, and utilized those tools for the benefit of government organizations and to enable me to be a good operator and do what I had to do. It was probably started back in the early 90s when I started to dive more into the more positive aspects of things and started seeking out teachers that I could learn from that had the other side of the scale that I could look at. And as a result of that, I pretty much steered away from all the dark stuff. I was still very active all the way up until 2003 doing the work I was doing for the government. But in between, I was able to fill my bag of tricks up, so to speak, with positive tools, positive medicine. I didn't really utilize a whole lot of that until after 2003, after my accident and this last tour of duty that I had over in the Middle East. And after that accident, what wound up happening is an explosion put me into a coma for a short period of time. When I was brought to and taken out of the field of combat, taken to Germany for medical reasons, and to go through that process, it was found that I was no longer a viable tool to be used as a soldier, and so I was medically retired out. And as a result of that, what started happening is the barriers that had been put in place over the years started to break down, and lots of issues started to happen. Wound up getting into drinking alcohol very heavily, misuse of the pharmaceutical medications that the Department of Veterans Affairs were having me on, and got really messed up for a very long period of time, and didn't realize that what was happening to me was the barriers were all coming down, and the personalities were all starting to mesh together. Memories are all starting to mesh together, and I was not able to make sense of anything. And it wasn't until probably late 2006 or so, 2007, when I left California after a divorce and moved down into Nevada, and came across a gentleman who wound up being a very close friend and a very close mentor by the name of David Corso, who had also been through the programs and had worked previously with Duncan O'Finian. And as a result of being able to work with him and spend time with him, he helped me to gain an understanding as to what I had been through, why, and start putting the pieces together. And as a result of that, I was able to, after an incident here in Nevada 7 or 8 years ago, wound up getting into some legal trouble, which I'm still currently paying off the last bits of. But all of that was a good thing in my book, because all those stepping stones that I had, those hurdles I had to jump over, enabled me to come to terms with who I am, what I am, and where do I want to go from there. And like you said, it was probably 2008. That was another 2 years after that I was actually a year and a half, probably early 2007, I really started to open up the doors. I worked with one of my previous teachers. She passed the reins on for, at the time, what was Heart Medicine Lodge, which is a lodge down in California. And she passed the reins on to me to carry on the medicine and start a lodge up here in Nevada. And so now Nevada, parts of Arizona, all the way into Texas are parts of my domain and my area of responsibility, so to speak, as far as a medicine person goes. And what's helped me and what I focus all of my time on at this point is the teachings of the Red Road, the medicine path, working with the medicine wheel, working with the sweat lodge, what the chanupa is, how to use it, why we use it, what are feathers, why we use them, smudge bowls. I go through all the basics all the way up to the more advanced things, as far as the protocols and ceremonies that we as Native people carry. And those are the things and tools which have carried me forward to where I am now. And what a blessing, and what a wonderful life. I've got a life that I could never fathom or dream of. And I don't have everything that I want, but I have everything that I need.
All right. Well said. Okay. So I can feel like all the energy lightening up, which is good. All right. So let's see. Do you want to talk about, how you started to manage your spirituality and stuff, and then you found a really amazing plant, the weed plant, and then it started to help you to move through a lot of your healing and get you sober and get you off all those bad pharmaceutical drugs. Do you want to talk about a little bit about how all that kind of happened? And so how you found, how you sought out other medicines, or they sought you out in order to help you heal?
Well, a good friend of mine, she's since crossed over. It was still back up in California. In 2005, she was a registered nurse, and she was a veteran and a combat veteran as well. And she actually was the first one to reintroduce me to the cannabis plant, and that was 2005. And I still had the impression, even after that period of time of introduction with her, of a very negative outlook on the cannabis plant, because I didn't really understand it, and I only knew what I had been told growing up, and all the stuff and all the lies that we've been told all these years about how bad and how dangerous cannabis is. So I was very skeptical. And it wasn't something at that point that I was ready to really look at. It probably wasn't until about about 9 years ago now. Jesus, it's been that long. That I started actually doing some research and started hearing some things. And that was when Colorado was first going through all the initial beginnings of trying to legalize marijuana. And so I started doing some research. It's like, what is this really all about? And let me dive into this and see what I can find out. So I started doing some research on my own. Then I got in contact with some people with scientific backgrounds that were working in the field and doing a lot of the talking back and forth across the continent to scientists over in Israel and Jerusalem and finding out the benefits or the possible benefits that might be associated with the cannabis plant, how it may be helpful in certain areas of Alzheimer's, people with brain injury, chronic debilitating pain. And as a result of that, waited until the legalization took place here in Nevada. And when it came online to do that, I went down and registered with the state to become a medical patient. And as a result of that, I started to notice dramatic changes almost immediately. The seizures started to stop within 15 minutes of starting to use the plant. And at first I did like probably most people do, and my introduction to it was through smoking it. And I started doing more research. And as I was doing that, I slowly, with the help of my wife and a few other people, started to get off the pharmaceutical medications that the VA had me on, which at the time, at the peak of that, I was on 16 different medications, sometimes 4 times a day. And I was not a very functional, productive human being. And as I started to wean off of those medications, I started to find that, my sobriety was more intact. I felt better. I was more productive. I was more alert. My pain was lessened. The seizures were almost inevitably entirely gone. And I did away entirely with the entire pharmaceutical industry and went straight back to homeopathic and use of cannabis. And I found it worked so wonderfully that I want to learn, okay, well, how can I help produce this plant for myself and save money, because the industry is so expensive for patients trying to obtain medicines. So I started doing research with that and got in contact with a local advocate and grower here in the state of Nevada. He took me under his wing and he started teaching me everything that he knew about growing the plant. And so I transferred into going to dispensaries as a medical patient to start growing my own on a small scale. And what's happened since then is now I don't have a large production. I'm not growing anywhere like 100 plants or anything like that. I grow enough for 3 patients. I have 2 other patients that live in my home, and all 3 of us are off of pharmaceuticals. All 3 of us are using strictly the cannabis plant, and I've learned how to currently transform that plant from not just a smokable medication, but also a topical, ingestible. And so for me, all forms of the cannabis plant broken down into different forms of medications is what I now use for treating my ailments. So not only do we have smokable material around, we also infuse honey, we infuse teas, we infuse coffee, we infuse butter, we have infused oils, we have infused topical oils that I make, all very basic recipes, tinctures, and in all the different forms. It has just turned out to be, I almost want to just call it a miracle drug. And I understand that there are a small percentage of people that this plant may not produce as much of a result as it has for myself. But for the most part, this is Creator's medicine. Creator put this plant on this planet for us to utilize, and it's been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And now with the information that's out there, I can't see not using this plant versus what the big pharma industry has got to offer. Another thing that I found out since is that cannabis is one of those medicines that is great for deprogramming people and breaking them out of the matrix of MKUltra and the programming and breaking down the barriers. It opens you up spiritually to other realities and more realities, I should say, more of what really is out there versus the veil of secrecy, the veil of lies that have been perpetrated on the American people and people of the entire world at this point. Because it's not just those of us who live in the Americas that are being lied to and manipulated and geared towards fear and all the other things that are currently going on. It's going on universally across the world, and cannabis is one of those things that helps to just break down the falsehoods of those barriers that they're trying to put in place, and you can see the world for what it really is, and see the truth.
Yes. So So I get a lot of questions being in, healthcare, alternative healthcare. And so I thought maybe it'd be fun to kind of go over, like the different qualities and usages. So I believe hemp comes from the same place the weed plant came from the same place as wheat in Afghanistan. So we used to all just grow wild like weeds. So wheat was a weed. Obviously, weed was a weed. And it would just grow as plant life, like native plant life around. And then I believe it's Afghanistan is where they first started to cultivate agriculture. So then they would have grown all these different weeds, as crops. And then they wouldn't be nomad anymore. They would be in one area type farmers, supposedly going from, hunter-gatherers to kind of more civilized communities. So a lot of people don't know that CBDs don't really come from THC. CBDs come from the actual hemp plant that is not going to get you high. And you can eat the plants, you can eat the leaves, you can juice them. I've heard people juicing them, just growing them to juice the whole plant for people that have cancer and stuff. But each type of medicine, like Bear was talking about, has different stuff in it. Preferably, my favorite oil is, one THC to one CBD. That one works the best for me, better than all the other CBDs, medicines out there. So I was going to see if Bear would talk to us a little bit about like the different kinds of products, because not all of them get you high. Some of them do, like heal your brain. Some of them reduce pain. Some give people an appetite. Some decrease appetites. But one of the things I really remember is when Bear was getting into all this stuff, he was really excited about his coffee. So I just remember he was excited about his pot coffee. So do you want to talk a little bit about like different products, like what pot in your coffee would help you do, and exactly what kind of material do you use to add into your coffee, kind of a thing, and then just kind of go through different things that you make and explain kind of like their usages and what people can do with them, because I want people to understand like they can do this too.
Well, like you were saying, there's different types of strains that work for different types of things, and I too find that a 1-to-1 ratio seems to work really well for me. And now, depending on the time of day, like if I have activities that I really want to be active and alert for, I'll lean more towards a sativa type strain to be a little bit more uplifted and a little bit more active. And then at nighttime, I'll use something more on the indica side of the house to be a little bit more mellow and calm down and be a lot more relaxed. Generally speaking, I find that most of the strains that I generally like to work with are the hybrid strains. And those are anywhere from 1-to-1, 60-40 split, depending on which side of the house you're working at. So I use a variety, and I've been experimenting as of late with a combination of mixing all three combinations together into different medicines. As far as for the coffee goes, I know now they have different products where they're actually infusing the coffee beans and all that. I haven't gotten into that. Primarily, I'll make what is referred to as the Rick Simpson oil, turn that, and then take a dropper full of that oil, put it into a cup of coffee, stir it in, let it dissolve, and drink a cup of coffee, and bam, there's medication for 4 to 6 hours. And I find that works pretty well. And there is a mild euphoric feeling that comes from it, but it's very short-lived, somewhere about 25 to 30 minutes, and then that dissipates. And then I notice that my speech is not impaired because I've got a brain injury, and so I'm able to speak a lot more clearly and more decisively and be understandable. And you can definitely tell the difference when I'm not medicated. My speech gets very slurred. I speak very quickly. I'm garbled, hard to understand, almost like sounds like the character that's the teacher on the Charlie Brown cartoon, where you can't understand a darn thing that the woman's saying. She knows she's saying something to the characters, but you can't understand it. And I've suffered having to go through that. And like I said, it maintains keeping at bay the seizures, so I don't suffer nearly as severely as I did prior to cannabis, even with all the heavy-duty pharmaceuticals, which also have horrible side effects. And sometimes the side effects were worse than what the cure of the medication was trying to offer me. And I don't have to worry about any of that anymore. And there's no such thing as overdosing with the use of cannabis. So I find, for me personally, my favorite way to use cannabis is in ingestible forms, which is they've taken very basic ingredients like a very pure, unrefined coconut oil, and then I actually have one of those magical butter machines. So I use that, and it makes the recipes very, very simple to do. And it really, all you have to do is lightly break up the material, decarboxylate it, which is basically putting your raw material into an oven at a very low temperature for about 30 minutes. It helps to activate the molecules and transform the molecules in the cannabis plant from an inactive chemical to an active chemical, which is what gives you the high. And or if it's a very high CBD plant, it will activate that, so the CBD is more activated. And then you take that activated material and you infuse it into something like a butter, And then you can basically you use that infused butter the same way you would normal butter. You use the same amount that you would to cook with. So if you want to make a batch of cookies, you use the infused butter versus regular butter, and now you have an infused cookie that you can sit down and eat, and you'll be getting your medication. Because I know there's a lot of people that suffer from breathing ailments, so smoking is not, and they've already proven that smoking cannabis is probably the least effective way to treat yourself as a medical patient for medical ailments. Their best way is ingestible. And if you are going to smoke it, then your best option is to vaporize it using a volcano or some other form of vaporization instead of just directly smoking it like a cigarette. And that way also you don't get all the carcinogens and the smoke, and you don't have to deal with that. So for me, the recipes I like to use are like the coconut oil. I find that coconut oil and cannabis seem to be working really wonderfully hand in hand. There's some sort of transformation that happens between the molecules of cannabis and coconut oil that they infuse together and bind together very well, and you wind up with a very beneficial medication. And those coconut-based products you can turn into topicals that you use in massage oil lotions, depending, and then you add your other ingredients like maybe aloe vera or something like that, and then you can use it as a burn treatment. And your topicals generally will not really give you much in the way of a high. You might, especially if you're a new patient and you're not used to cannabis at all, you might get a little bit of a mild euphoric feeling from it, but generally speaking, you won't get the high that you would associate with smoking. And like I said, I personally have found that ingestible forms of cannabis seem to work the best, and it's very inexpensive. Your most expensive aspect of cannabis is going to be the initial starting it up, buying your seeds. The seeds are not cheap, but they're not horribly expensive to buy on the market. And there's many different avenues that you can go, and different companies that you can get cannabis seeds from that you can grow on your own. I generally like to take out the guesswork of it, and I usually order already feminized seeds. That way I don't have to worry about getting a plant and trying to mature it to a state to find out if it's male or female. I already know that I've got a female plant, and I can just get it growing, get it mature, get it to harvest, and then I can break it down into what I want to use into other forms of making medicines. And generally speaking, I keep a very, very simplified list. I do a very basic thing every time I harvest. I do a batch of cannabis butter. I do a batch of coconut infused cooking oil. I do a batch of what is Rick Simpson oil, which is basically taking like isopropyl alcohol and you cook it down to where it's the consistency of an oil. Fill that into a dropper, and then you basically use one single dosage of that is the size of a grain of rice, and that is enough to give you a treatment from 4 to 6 hours. And so I use that. Then there's topicals for muscle ache, and you basically use any form of a basic type of cream, a generic cream at an organic store you pick up, organic vegetable glycerin, and you can infuse that. Same thing with your tinctures. You can go with an alcohol-based tincture and cook it down. Those tend to be a little bit stingy on the back of the throat when you use them because of the alcohol it's in them, even though it's been cooked down. So I like to go with more of a glycerin, which doesn't offer the burn. It's very easy to take, very easy to ingest. Infusing honey, getting very pure honey that hasn't been tainted, that's from local farmers, then taking that honey and infusing it. And one of the best machines that I've found out on the market that's worked really well, I've been using it now for probably about 8 months and tried every recipe I can think of, is called the Magical Butter Machine. It really takes all the guesswork out of it. Everything gives you a recipe. You already know what your measurements are. So you know how much raw material to put in versus how much of your oil that you're going to use or how much of your butter you're going to use. And then you press the button, and when it's done, you strain it off, you put it into the container, and you're done. It really takes no effort whatsoever. So if you're a medical patient and you're disabled, maybe you're in a wheelchair, maybe you suffered a stroke, this is something that you can use that is very, very easy to do and takes very little effort and very little work. And like I said, the most of the work comes from actually having to grow the plant, and your expense is going to be in, if you're going to be doing indoor growing, to determine how many plants you want to grow, and then you have to figure out what type of lighting system you want to use. I've transferred over to what they call using an LED light system, which is very high intensity, very low heat, very low energy output, and I've gotten a very, very good results with that versus the original high pressure sodium grows. And those lights tend to be very, very hot, and you have to be very wary of your temperature and everything like that in your environment. And once you get things dialed in, you can start producing. Like I have, my grow is generally 2 tents, and at any one time I can be growing upwards of 8 to 12 plants, depending on what size pots I want to grow in. And I generally grow medium height plants. They're not very tall. We're talking somewhere between 18 and 24 inches, and that's where they are when I start to flower them. So I can grow a large number of plants in a smaller area, and it doesn't require a lot. One plant in the grow that I'm doing, one plant is averaging for me roughly about 2 to 2.25 ounces of raw material, and from 2.25 ounces that produces, in the various forms that I'm able to break it down, enough medicine, one plant, to sustain one medical patient for an entire month. So does that answer some of that for you?
Yeah, that's awesome. So also too, because you can, turn weed into an oil, it helps it makes it kind of a different product, when you bind it to a fat. So some people do butter. If you're a vegan or whatever else, a lot of people are starting to like coconut oil. And coconut oil has pretty much, I think, the most essential fatty acids in it, which probably has to make, the medicine with the cannabis like just that much better, because a lot of people don't understand processes of the body, and we need a lot of essential fatty acids, and each acid, like some can keep you from ever getting infection. So say you're diabetes and you're prone to infection, you could, if you're taking cannabis and a good, quality coconut oil, that coconut oil can also help to keep you from having a infection. That one of the essential fatty acids in coconut oil kills fungus, antimicrobial. So that can also help your product to be good a lot longer than, say, butter, because of the animal fat in butter will eventually like rot. So that's always a key thing. And one of the other there's tons of different essential fatty acids in raw coconut oil. So the other one that I was reading about, what was it? Infections, fungus, I forgot. But anyway, each essential fatty acid has its own. That's why a lot of people that have had Alzheimer's, they start giving them heavy duty, really not overly pressed raw coconut oil, and they start to function after 3 weeks, is because all the processes in the body require essential fatty acid of some kind. Probably the most important nutrient that you can take across the board. So I think, actually adding your cannabis product to the coconut oil is just really smart, and just can really make it into like a really mega nutrient as well for the body. So, on the skin and everything. So that's really good stuff. Okay. So the other thing too is a lot of people out there, they don't know if you have recreational cannabis or you think you're a medical marijuana candidate, you can hunt down how to get a card or go to your store, and it usually requires an ID. You should go look. And just see what they have. And I get a lot of my clients who have injury and they get in a lot of pain. The first place I take them these days is the recreational marijuana store. And then if they want to get a license, great. But I make them get candies to reduce pain for the day without a lot of, massive side effects. A lot of this stuff, I make sure they get CBDs, 1-to-1 at least. And then also, a couple other things that deal with other stuff that they have going on. So, for example, if you have nausea, a lot of people get a lot of nausea if they have a bad injury or if they have a head injury or things like that. And so there's types of cannabis that can bring your nausea way down. It's always good to be honest with the people that are at the store before you ever start venturing out and growing it your own. And so you should just be really honest about, what your needs, wants, and desires are that you need from the medicines. Anyway, that's just what I found. And I love getting people off of the, pharmaceutics for sure, because that's the biggest thing in my practice I deal with is, trying to get people off the antipsychotics, the sleep medicine, and the, Xanax and OxyContin and all the combinations of stuff that they're taking, which is pretty brutal. And you will die. This is the other thing too is it's proven fact that you will die a lot years and years and years younger than you should by taking pharmaceutical drugs. Period. End of story. We just it's been coming out that 64,000 people are dying annually from drug complications and problems from, the opiates, and they're just the same as heroin. So you just have to be really careful with a lot of that stuff and be careful about how far you take those drugs and how much you take. Question. Get some cannabis medicine. So I have to tell you a quick story about Bear. So when I first, was with Bear, personally, when he had this ceremony in Pahrump, he invited like lots of different people to come from all over. Let's just say he was coming out of the closet. No, I'm just kidding. And he was so adverse during that. He was saying he was crunchy in his past about weed and, really skeptical of it and really conservative end of it. So during that time period, I was like, hey, can I smoke some medicine? He's like, no. You have to leave the fence. I'm like, okay. So that tells you how big this has been for Bear and how great his life is now, by looking into it, not being afraid of it, and letting go of your belief systems around it, because it can heal your life. It can heal your body, which is, you need that to operate around in your life. Okay, so there was some other things on here. Okay, so what is your favorite thing that you like to make for cannabis medicine?
I would say my favorite that I find is probably the most versatile that I can do the most with would probably be the coconut infused cooking oil, because you can use that in so many different things. You can take that cooking oil, you can use it strictly as you would a regular oil, like an olive oil or a avocado oil, as you're cooking whatever food you're going to make. But I have found that that's so versatile. You can take that base and you can turn that into a topical hand cream, a topical moisturizer. I've even gone so far as to look up the basic ingredients of an organic hair conditioner, and so I've got somebody that uses it as a hair conditioner, and they're saying that their hair is starting to thicken up, and we're talking about somebody who's a cancer patient, so they're regaining hair growth from that and stimulation on the scalp from that. It's not work. That doesn't seem to work for everybody, but this particular person has noticed some beneficial results in regaining some regrowth of hair. Then again, also infusing into other topicals such and adding stuff like aloe vera, and I do get something like some of the red peppers, and I'll crush up red peppers into a super fine powder and then add that into a cream, and then you've got the capsaicin. So use that for a topical for when you've got muscle ache, or maybe you've pulled a muscle or something like that. You can rub that in, so you're getting the beneficial aspects of the capsaicin from the peppers, as well as you're getting the benefits of the CBD from the cannabis plant. So that's pretty awesome. And it seems to be across the board one of the components that you can make that is very, very simple to make, and it's very, very versatile. You're limited only by your own imagination as to what you can do with it. It's pretty amazing. And my dog, which because you spent time with my girl Takala, she.
Hold on, Bear. We're going to commercial. We'll be right back in 4 minutes.
Three minutes I got. Looking up the stairs.
Hey, Bear, I can hear you.
Oh.
You want to mute for a couple minutes? Thanks.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
This is Barbara DeLong, host of Nightlight Radio, inviting you to join me on a cosmic journey, exploring a metaphysical montage of spiritual material, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between, including spiritual readings for those who seek enlightenment. Let Nightlight provide you with equal measure of light, love and laughter, insight, wisdom, and inspiration. Monday nights, 10 to 12 p.m. Eastern, right here on Studio B, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hey everybody, it's Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff, the host of Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show on Revolution Radio. And today my guest is Bear, Medicine Bear Whitebow, who is a good friend of mine, who we were talking in the first hour about his MKUltra past, just touching it as military stuff. The Red Road, finding himself, getting on the journey to light. And then we just spent the other part of the first hour talking about cannabis as a medicine and how it's helped Bear to recover and uncover and unravel and heal himself and his past on all different kinds of levels. And so we're going to go ahead and I'm just going to say you can find me on Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff Facebook. I also have a YouTube channel, Consciousness of Economics and Urban Farm Project. I'm Steemit at Bridgette. And that's about it. That's all the ways that you can find me. If you want to donate to the show, or you want to contact me, or you have questions, or you want to set up an appointment, you can contact me at consciousnessofelconomics@gmail.com. You can also use that same email on PayPal if you want to donate, consciousnessofeconomics@gmail.com. All right, so before we, and this other thing too is, because, Bear is making a transition here into, working with the community and moving it forward and doing less with holding on to the past, unless it's very, very beneficial, but that would be up to him. And he would have to decide what that would be. So if he wants to give contact information or where you can find him at the end of the show, we'll be more than happy to hear that. And if he chooses not to, that's okay too. All right. So before we were going to end the show, Bear was talking about his dog. So you want to start up there? And cannabis medicine.
Well, my dog is a mixed breed, and genetically speaking, she's been unfortunate that she's got the genetic disposition for the seizure disorder. So they had her on phenobarbital, and unfortunately, she became so lethargic and everything like that. I have now got her on strictly a low dosage THC, high CBD form of the cannabis medication. I gave it to her in a pill form or an oil into her food, or I break it down into a powder. And she has now been pharmaceutical free herself, going on 1.5 years, and not one single seizure. So for your pets and your animals, cannabis is a viable option. It's a healthy alternative to the veterinarian pharmaceuticals that are offered. Not to mention, it will help to save your pocketbook, because you can make these medicines for your animals at home at next to no cost at all. Roughly for her, a 30-day supply of medication of the phenobarbital was costing me upwards of about $88 a month. The medication she's on now winds up costing me roughly about $10.50 a month. So there's just a little bit of difference in the cost. So if you're looking at alternatives for that and are on a fixed income or whatnot, this is an alternative medication. Even if you're not a medical patient for yourself, but you're looking for an alternative for your pets, this is something that's worth looking into. And there is one company out there that I would recommend, and it's called Therabis, and they make medications specifically for cats and dogs. That is very good. It's derived strictly from the hemp plant, so there's no possibility of getting your animal high from the use of the medication, if you're worried or concerned about that.
But I use the 1-to-1, and I'm not as savvy as Bear. I should be. I'm a biodynamic farmer, but I go to the recreational and get the 1-to-1. But I give it to my dog, and I started giving it to her because she had a lot of anxiety all the time. Because there's a lot of shooting in Nevada, and she doesn't like guns. So everywhere we go, there's going to be some kind of like shooting noises. So I give it to her for anxiety. Say there's too many thunderstorms. As soon as those thunderstorms, I'll give her a dosage of the 1-to-1, and the THC in the 1-to-1 helps her to like really calm down and get her heart rhythm back. The other thing I noticed is, she had a couple tumors kind of in her gut, little ones, and and what's happened has been the weirdest thing, giving her to the 1-to-1. I give it to her every night on her food. She gets 8 drops. I get 8 drops, and then we go to bed. But these little tumors started coming out of her head and stuff, like these little, pinky end fingers, tumors, and came out of her head and stuff fell off. And she's going to be 9. And the cannabis has just really helped her. It's really changed her life. And so I always give my dog, I always buy medicines my dog can take. So I always try to use plant medicines. And so another thing too that's really interesting is I work on horses. I do old school hand manipulation. I do all kinds of stuff on horses. But one of the things is I've been noticing lately is, so when horses are not eating grass, they're not eating plants that grow in the grass. And some of those plants are, high in 3,6,9, essential fatty acids. So their hair starts to get bad over time because people feed them a lot of hay and they can't actually forage for the plants that they need. And the hay doesn't really, it has like no 3,6, it has no essential fatty acids in it. So, I was thinking, people could actually grow on their property, and I've tried to talk to some of my more conservative clients, but I try to do nutritional and stuff like that stuff. So, they have to give them essential fatty acid stuff. And the other thing too is in a hemp plant, it has like some of the highest essential fatty acids, that you can get per volume. But, people could grow a few hemp plants, even like sterile hemp, so there's no, buds on them or anything. And then you have them and you can forage a little bit of them, a few, of the leaves. You can find out how much you can feed them of the, non-THC hemp plants. And then, give them some of that in their food every day to actually give them their essential fatty acids, and you could grow the plant, and then you can start having a relationship with the plant. And it could really help your horses. I saw online that if you want to, if you have a lot of horses, it's going to be pretty expensive for the CBDs. It might be better for you to grow a little crop since you farm anyway, most of you, and make the CBDs yourself. But I forget, it was like a month's supply or 15 days supply. It wasn't very much. It was like $800 for a horse because a horse is big. So just some ideas, for you people out there that have animals and they have anxiety or different kinds of things, kind of a situation. So anyway, I'm like getting these flashes, and so Bear's like flashing me all kinds of stuff on the Skype. All right, so super good for your animals. Hey Bear, have you ever tried to feed your dog like just the plant right off the plant cut up in the food, or so you just do a powder and an oil for them?
I've tried to give it to her that way a few times, and she doesn't particularly care for it that way. I know if you were to grow and harvest the plant and just eat it raw, you will get all the benefits of the CBD and the benefits of the plant, and you will not get high no matter how much of it you eat, because you have to activate it. You have to get it above 160 degrees for at least 25 minutes before you will activate the molecules in the cannabis plant to get the psychoactive effect. So for anybody that wants to juice the plant raw, I've done that. It doesn't taste very good. It's like drinking a glass of wheatgrass. It's kind of yucky tasting, but for me personally, the benefits outweigh the nasty taste in my mouth for a few minutes, and I can always rinse that out with a little bit of mouthwash or a cup of coffee. So that really doesn't bother me. And like I said, you can eat the plant raw without activating it, and you will never get high from it, but you will get the medical benefit from it. And it does help to regulate and keep your intestines clear so that you stay a little bit more regular, and you don't have to use things like Metamucil or over-the-counter things to keep your digestive tract clear and free and running smoothly, so to speak.
Right. Well, that's good. You need to take a poop. That's how you do it, folks. No, I'm just kidding. All right. So, all right. So I just was going to put this stuff out here because, I had talked to Bear. It was up to him. And he offered his website so people can contact him there. It's Rainbow People's Medicine Lodge, and it's www.rpmlmedicinelodge.org. And then he also he would like to offer his email address, but he also wants to attach to it that you should really go look at the other 2 interviews that he's done with Randy before you contact him. Okay, so it's AMINDIANVET Snake Clan SNAKECLAN @hush.com. So I hope you got all that, but we also do have archives that you can pay for, so $6 a month, super cheap. Okay, and then that looks like about it. So we got his personal information out of the way. But I always, it's up to the person and what they want to share on my show. That's just kind of how it is.
I've been out there I've been doing the work that I do on the spiritual side of things, spiritual healing work for going on. Good Lord, I've been at this now for well over 25 years, and this is all I do. This is what Creator put me on this planet for. This is my life mission. This is the contract I signed. This is all I'm here for. So I'm here to help my community, help my fellow man and woman, and let's grow, let's heal, let's find common ground. Even if we don't agree on everything, let's find common ground and where we can find balance and heal each other, and then take that out into our community and help heal our world. It's a sick world we've got going on right now.
It is pretty rough. It's even rough for those of us who are walking a good road. Okay, so do you want to maybe give listeners some ideas of, so we talked about like the physical medicine end of things, but maybe some tools like, to utilize for a lot of the people that are out there struggling and are kind of waking up and kind of confused and stressed out, maybe even feel like they're going off the deep end. What would you offer them? I mean, what would you say they should do? Maybe give them a practice or some tools or something that you think would be beneficial for them.
Well, lucky for me, I carry what I refer to as duality medicine. I've got 2 different bloodlines that I draw on. One is obviously more predominant than the other because I was formally given instruction from an early age and guided towards the Native American aspects of things. And like I said, at first I was given all the tools for the dark aspects of Native American medicine and teachings, pretty much to do harm. But I also carry the Nordic Celtic side and go back far enough in my bloodline. It's Druidic practices. And so I draw on both of those modalities. And I would suggest if you have nothing else going for you and you're open to it, try Native American spirituality, try Celtic, Nordic spirituality. And what I'm talking about is getting with a practitioner who is well-versed in the usage of crystals, runes, a bona fide medicine teacher, one who's not charging fees for medicine, like the individual who did years ago, 9 or 10 years ago now, back in Sedona, where we had people actually that were put in harm's way and passed away inside of a sweat lodge because they were dealing with a practitioner who didn't know what they were doing, didn't have any instruction. The formal instruction for a sweat lodge is something that is years and years and years of learning and working with somebody, a medicine person who is very well versed in that. And the teachings, I always tell everybody, if somebody's charging for a spiritual weekend, run. The ceremonies that I conduct are free of charge. I do ask for donations. I mean, we run the lodge off of donation only. And that, from that aspect, you get out of it what you're willing to put into it. Now, donations may very well mean not monetarily giving donations, but maybe when you show up to a lodge gathering, you bring rolls of toilet paper, you bring food to share, you bring water, you bring utensils to share so that the host doesn't have to carry the weight of buying and growing and producing all the meals, helping out with cooking. I mean, there's many different ways to give back to a community and many different ways to give back to a lodge. And not all of it is necessarily meaning you have to reach into your pocketbook and break out greenbacks to give. Those are always appreciated too, because if we get a big enough fund, when somebody calls me and they're in dire needs, it's like, hey, I can't, I'm hurting this month. My disability check didn't come in on time. I can't pay my electricity bill. I'm able to offer some of those funds to help somebody out in that respect. And we always send back to the Pine Ridge Reservation every year, send back donations of blankets back there because it's a very, very poor reservation and they are in dire need of help. The elders are suffering back there. So we try to help out and give back to our own community as well as the community at large in any way that we can. And that's how we synchronize together. And that's how we come together as a community. And so I would suggest if you're kind of lost and you're not quite sure what path to take, and I'm not saying the native path or even the Nordic or Celtic or Druidic path or working with crystals is going to work for you, but it's a starting point. You have to start somewhere. And better to start somewhere and gain a little bit of knowledge. And maybe you get a little bit of help and it's not quite what you're looking for, but it opens up a door and opens up pathways to other avenues, and stay open and just keep an open heart and an open mind. And there's an old saying, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So as long as you stay open to it, Creator's going to put into your path that which you need. It may not be a fun path. It may not be an easy path, but certainly going to get you down the road further than where you're at, and you'll get out of that stagnant water that you're standing in.
Awesome. Yeah, no, so true. And all I can do is I can just add my, I've been really lucky my whole life, and all the teachers that I've had, and especially my native teachers. And I always got the ones that were like, were tough. And I'm glad they were tough because I was kind of a turd sometimes when I was younger. But yeah, so for me, the path or the red road is more and more, I think, every year that I'm in it and around people who are involved in it, just becomes my life. Just all the instructions around it just becomes how I live my life. I live my life in ceremony, as much ceremony as possible. I do get detained. I do have drama and stress and all these other things, but I find that if I go back to, the simplest of the instructions, it gets me back in the center. And then I can participate with everything a little bit more in balance instead of more reactive. So for me, it's been a really valuable and path, and I have no idea how I would be here now without it. And so just from my type of experience, but I think anything that, like Bear said, anything that is going to help you to heal, you don't really know what that's going to be until you kind of start looking around and seeing what's available to you. I mean, a lot of people can start at Course in Miracles. There's a lot of them where you can go and it's a study group, and it kind of helps to, maybe start to change your mind and belief system and be able to sit with other people who are trying to figure it out too. But there's a lot of different stuff that one can do. Yeah. So anyway, So what are you doing now? Are you guys doing, because I haven't really heard from you in a while. I haven't really had time to talk because, things are busy. But I know that you guys were going to start up again, possibly doing lodge and stuff like that. Have you guys been able to do that? And maybe any information about it, and then, or if you're going to start gearing up for the future, or what you see, work that's coming down the pike now that you feel driven to do.
Well, I've currently got an apprenticeship program going, and I've got one, and I'm only willing to work with 1 or 2 students at a time, just because it's so intensive, and the subject matter that we dive into is very, very personal, and we're talking about healing on a very personal level, and then as well as teaching a student the actual ceremonies, what's involved in that, taking them all the way through it from, like, for instance, in regards to an EP ceremony, the sweat lodge. I'll start off a student, helping me to work with constructing the lodge, what that's all about, what each pole represents, why we built it the way that we built it, what the construction's about, where the fire pit is placed, why we do it, how you build the fire pit for a ceremony, why we do it, the prayers that are involved, and then slowly start working the person up to starting them off as a fire tender, then working them up to the point where they're actually the water pour inside the lodge and they're holding the energy for the people. And my hope is always to pass on the medicine and not hoard it. And I teach. My philosophy is I teach teachers. People that are already somewhat spiritually in tune and they're drawn to this path. That's what I'm here for. I will give you all the medicine that I carry and hope that you carry it forward, and give you my free blessing to go forward and plant the seed and start up a continuation of the lodge in a little bit different form, in your own way, doing your own work. My forte and where I specialize in is actually the sweat lodge ceremony and the teaching thereof. I also teach the medicine wheel and how to use it and why we use it and the different realms of it, and dive into that very deeply. And that apprenticeship program, right now, the most I've been able to condense it down is roughly to about 9 months. So we're talking some very intensive work and a very heavy commitment. But the lodge is open to everybody. One of the instructions I was given when the lodge was handed over to me was, when a student shows up, you will teach. Nowhere in that instruction did it say anything about race, creed, color. It just said, when a student showed up with a good heart and a pure heart, you will teach. So I don't see race, color, or creed when a student comes. It doesn't matter to me if you're Chinese, if you're African American, if you're Caucasian, if you're Native American. It does not matter. What matters to me is your purity of heart. Where's your heart at? Where's your focus at? And as long as you don't take away from the ceremonies, I'll freely pass them along. And I'll teach people how to create their own chanupa, their own peace pipe. That is something that if you're really drawn to. Now that's a whole other discussion that would take another couple of hours that we could do a whole nother show on, just the chanupa. And so it gives you some ideas to the intensity of that. As far as the lodge goes, a year and a half ago, we were fortunate enough to have the opportunity to buy the home that we're in, and we've classified the home and the property and I had to, because of being the state of Nevada and with all the things that they have with ministers here, had to register the home as a church. Even though we're technically not a church, we're more of, I guess, what you would call a spiritual center, something of that nature. So our home is where we host the lodge, and in the backyard we've got an area for a medicine wheel that we do teachings on. We've got the sweat lodge the fire pit's been built. The lodge itself has not yet been built. I'm waiting for a group of people to get in contact with me to get that up and running. We want to start hosting a monthly drumming circle, and of course doing one-on-one healing work and community healing work, bringing in different teachers from different aspects, as well as not just Native American teachings, but open to other teachings, to bring other teachers in to be speakers, to speak for a weekend, also do different healing work for a weekend. So if we got practitioners that are available that are wanting a place to come and open up their heart and what they have to offer is, say, somebody who specializes in crystal healing work, we'll give them a place to do that and host them for a weekend. And whatever donation or whatever it is that they want to do, if they're charging a fee or whatever, we'll work with that. And we've got the doors open currently. So we are open and ready for business, have been, and it's just a matter of the students and the people wanting to become members of the lodge. And to become a member of the lodge, it's a heart connection. It's a heart commitment. Once you become a member, you're a lifetime member, and you do with the lodge what it is that you're called to do. And if you have different teachings from different medicine teachers, we welcome that. We welcome all things and bring it along. And it's about bringing the community together. How can we bind together and become stronger and unified as a people and go out and help to heal this planet, Mother Earth, that has so graciously given us this beautiful environment and this beautiful home to live upon.
Hey, okay, so I'm going to throw a couple things out there, Bear. One is I could come that way in November and help build the lodge, if you wanted to do something like that. And otherwise, I could, on my end, at least start looking for some of the stuff that you're going to need. Thrift stores and stuff are good for a lot of things. So if you also want to send me a list, I could put that list up, and I could put it on the YouTube as well, so people know what they can send you. You know what I mean? Contact you to help you. So if you want to do something like that, I could start collecting stuff now and then come in November on my journey across. But I would love to do that. I'd love to be involved with the building of the lodge, if possible.
That sounds wonderful. We have all the blankets. The thing that we will wind up needing is the grandfather stones for the fire pit. I always start off with a 36 stone. Whether or not I use all 36 in a ceremony is really dependent on what creator tells me at the time, and I never know beforehand. But we'll need the stones. We obviously need
what kind of stones? What kind of stones do you like or prefer? So that way, people out there that want to come, they'll know what kind of stones to bring.
we generally try to stay as close to lava stone as possible. Usually the size is no larger than a large softball or a grapefruit, just because the fire pit can't be all that large, and we've got fire restrictions here. So we've had to kind of modify things because we don't have the variability for a completely open pit fire, bonfire type setting like we did in Pahrump. White sage we always need, tobacco we always need, and I'm currently on the market looking for a material that I can use in place of white willow that is at least 6 feet in length, and I need at least 24 poles for that to actually build the lodge. Now, if I can find an alternative material that I can use, it means that it's a wood that is pliable that I can bend without breaking to actually build the lodge and tie it down. I'm open to that too. So we don't have to stick strictly with white willow. So we're currently looking for that type of material right now.
All right. So anybody out there that's listening that may have a solution to that, don't forget you can contact Bear at the Rainbow People's Medicine Lodge .org. So make sure and connect with him. Okay. So do you want to tell us, do you want to give, because sometimes new people may collect a stone or something that they probably should have traded or given permission or given an offering. So do you want to kind of give people a brief idea of how maybe you would like an offering given to the stone before they bring it to the lodge, to kind of notify the stone what it might be used for, or whatever is in your teaching, so that we're not taking and, trespassing with the stone? Do you want to give just a little idea of how they can make sure if they're going to help you with stones that they just kind of might have a little idea on how to make an offering or blessing to the stone in the process as well?
Well, generally speaking, when we go out to gather material out in nature, we always carry a pouch of tobacco with us, usually have sage. You can do a little prayer. You give for what you take. So you're taking something from the mother, so you want to give something to the mother. So you offer a tobacco tie prayer offering. You can sit down and do a prayer and meditation. It's really whatever's called to in your heart. And I don't usually like to be too strict on that. Generally speaking, you're doing a giveaway to Mother Earth, and you always are going to get out what you give. So think of it from that aspect of your heart. What is your intent? What is it you're wanting? What is it that you need? I'm Creator, I need this for this type of healing. What does that mean to you? What does that cost you? Generally, like in the giveaway ceremony, I usually guide people to stick with maybe things that they hold dear to their heart that maybe they're not honoring, maybe they're not using, maybe they've got this really wonderful set of crystals sitting on their mantle, and they're not really utilizing them, or they have a bag of runes that they haven't used in a couple of years. Maybe take that medicine and pass it on. Maybe it was gifted to you from somebody that you really love and care about, and it's something that really has personal significance to you, but you're just not using it currently. Giveaway generally is going to be a little bit heart-wrenching. It's going to be something that pulls on your heartstrings. It's something that really means something to you. So you're bringing that to the giveaway blanket, and you're offering that so that somebody else can pick up that medicine and they can carry forward with it and use it. And those giveaways, generally speaking, pull on your heartstrings a little bit. So if you try and keep that in mind, that's about the only guidance I would give anybody. And as far as when you go out into nature and you're going to take like a stone to bring to Sweat Lodge, you always want to put something in its place. So make a prayer offering, make a prayer tie, and leave the prayer tie in its place. It could be as simple as a pinch of tobacco, or it could be as extravagant as a set of earrings that you really like, or whatever it is that you're called to. You have to listen to your own heart and follow your own guides on that.
Good answer. All right. So do you have a place on the...
I'm sorry, I lost you.
Oh, sorry. I said, I know in the past on the website that you had a section on the lodge site for protocol. Do you guys still have the protocol up?
Yes, I have the protocol still up.
Okay. And then do you have an area where you put what people can bring? You know, like you went through a list of stuff like toilet paper or whatever else that people feel like, you know, that they can bring in case they want to come up there.
Well, generally speaking, when I know that we're going to have a weekend coming up, I will put together a list of items. We'll also try to coordinate with people that are coming for the potluck giveaway, because we do all the so for food items, so that we don't have duplicates, or like 5 people bringing loaves of bread. We only get maybe 1 or 2, and try to keep it a little bit more versatile. I'll generally put a list together, and I'll put that out via Facebook, or I'll put it out into people that contact me that are planning on coming. I'll put together a group email message, and I'll put together a list at that time, usually at least 2 to 3 weeks in advance of the actual ceremony, so that everybody's on the same page. And at that time, we know exactly what all's going to be brought and how much and all that stuff. We do, in the ceremony that I conduct, we do what's called a grandfather stew. So every food item that's brought to go into this, everybody that brings something, regardless of what it is, sometimes we'll wind up with a grandfather stew that's got some very strange items in it people bring. But whatever is brought gets added to that stew. And that, as the ceremony is started in the morning and we're building the lodge and we're getting the prayer ties done and we're covering the lodge and all that, that grandfather stew is cooking. So all that medicine is brewing itself together, and all that medicine is coming together and binding together, and everybody's energy is coming together. So at the end of the ceremony, when we have the meal, everybody's getting a piece of what everybody brought and taking that medicine in. So that's kind of the concept behind all of that.
All right, super good stuff for people to know. So this is the thing, is if you're super interested, you really need, something like this, you may be close to Las Vegas, you may want to take a trip. You may want to contact Bear and talk to him. You may have bad post-traumatic stress disorder and have had a tough journey. Bear understands. So it's all there. So you don't have to worry about what you're doing, what you're not doing. And that, if you want to do it and you contact, then, all the information will be provided so that you don't feel uncomfortable, that you won't feel terrified or scared or anything like that. That, it's all done in a good way for everybody that comes. And it actually can kind of be fun, to see other people kind of coming together in a community. If you haven't got to have that kind of an experience, kind of a really interesting experience on the healing road, and have other people supporting you, whether you know them or not, can be just an amazing experience. I've found it to be really good for me. All right, so is there anything else that you want to tell them about the work that you're doing? And what about where do you see people, because these are the conversations I have with a lot of people I know, is like, where do you see things right now and where they're at? And then maybe what do you see as your part for like a transitionary situation, and where do you see yourself maybe in the future with your work and the world?
Well, as far as my role in all of this, I've been carrying a vision for a very, very long time. And I've got things in the works that are slowly coming together and moving in the direction of actually getting a commune type community put together. Where exactly, I'm not 100% sure yet. Creator hasn't opened up all those doors yet. I've got windows to have ideas as to where that might be taking place. And I'm actually gearing towards really dialing that in now. What that's going to wind up entailing is a year-round small group of us that will be basically living on this particular property year-round. We're there constantly. We've got the garden growing, we've got the food sources going, we've got the clean water source going, and a small community. And then people, as they are called to, will come up for maybe a couple weeks, maybe a couple months, maybe a year, and they'll be spending time with us at this community. And your room and board is basically, you'll be helping us out, as we've got crops coming down, be it corn, squash, grapefruit, whatever it is that we're growing, we'll be needing to have people help us to harvest all that. And, we're planning on trying to be as self-sustainable as we possibly can, and also constantly doing the workshops on very regular occasions, holding and hosting sweat lodges, medicine wheel teachings, day-to-day healing work. So that's basically the community and the vision that I have, and I've got a pretty good description of it. The vision I've carried for like 25 years now on the website, and it goes into pretty great detail as to all the different things that I see coming to fruition for that, and that would be my role in things. And as things progress, obviously, I'll be taking on students here and there, and those that are willing to go the distance with it, I'll pass on to medicine, and they may decide to form another lodge in a different area in a different state, and that's wonderful. It's the whole idea here is to plant seeds and get those seeds to take root and to grow. And I don't need to be in charge of all of that. I don't want to be in charge of all that. I've got enough on my plate just trying to do what I'm doing. But I'm here and available for anybody that wants to step into that type of energy. And, maybe there's aspects of the vision I have, which like I said, is described on the website. You can read it, and anything that rings true for you, that aspect of that, it's like, you know what, I see what you want to do in this part of your vision. I have a background in being able to do this, this, and this. Can we network together and pull this aspect of it together and make that come to light? It's like, sure, that's exactly what it's all about. This is not just my vision. This is the vision I've been given for the people, and I carry it for the people. The medicine I carry is not my medicine. I'm just the caretaker. I'm just the lodge caretaker. I have no control over Creator's medicine. It's Creator's medicine. It's here for everyone that wants it and everybody that needs it.
So one of the things I haven't really got to talk to Bear in a really, really long time, because we both have been like extremely busy. But it's really good, to be able to sit here and listen, because if anybody's listening, you could totally hear Bear change. At the beginning, he's really monitoring what he was going to say about everything. It was kind of, lethargic and slow coming, and he was careful. And then you start to hear him start to talk about stuff he's passionate about, right? And it's like this whole other person comes out. And the other great thing, Bear, I want to say is that it might be the first time that we've ever had a conversation where I feel your voice and your heart. And I can actually feel that, you know what I mean, coming forth. So, and I'm not saying, I just, we get stressed out and talk about things, and sometimes we're like not in our heart. But what I'm saying is I really feel like you're in your heart. I can hear it. So I'm really excited about that, because I know how hard you've worked. So proud of you. I'm proud of you.
Well, thank you.
And I love you. All right. So hopefully, Bear and we also kind of had a vision long term. So hopefully Bear will be able to come, as soon as all the funding finishes up. Who knows when that's going to happen, and we can buy the land for the combat veterans to come and learn how to biodynamic farm. Part of the area has already been, designed so that Bear can come visit us, or he can come have a place to stay, or he can stay there, or whatever he likes to do, but he'll be directly involved with the building of the ceremonial area, our medicine wheel and the lodge and everything else. And we hope to hold a few, at least a couple ceremonies where Bear can come up and he can lead some stuff. In the beginning, of course, first thing we're probably going to do is get a bunch of people together and build a medicine wheel and build the lodge and create the area. So just to get the whole property, bam, in a good way, get, energies healed, and so that the healing can happen and the people can come forth to be there. So hopefully that will come together, and that'll be really exciting. Hopefully it's in the near future. Okay, so is there anything else that you want to talk about? Like, is there anything that you really see going on with people right now? Because I know that you get a lot of, sometimes people on Facebook and stuff like that kind of are trying to find their way. And so what do you see that's going on right now? Do you see a lot of people that are really awakening, or do you see a lot of people that are stuck at like certain points, and are they a collective point? And so just maybe talk about that a little bit.
Well, yeah, I see that. Let me put it this way. I still have hope. My heart is burdened, but I still have hope. We're progressing into what we can now refer to as the age of Aquarius. Have we gotten to that point? Have we crossed the threshold yet? No, I don't believe we have. Do I believe that we can? Yes. Is it going to take a lot more work? Is it going to take a lot more people being woken up? I believe a whole lot more work needs to be done, and I believe we have a very, very short window within which to make that happen. We're currently, not to be overly dramatic or to instill fear, but from my point of view and from what I've seen and from what I've been told, we're at that place of inhumanity and the human condition and the human path where the line in the sand is being drawn. We are either going to become free, advanced spiritual beings, or we are going to become encased into an enslaved dystopian society. And by all indications, there's forces on both sides that are battling things out right now. And the battlefield is present. It's here and now. And we all have a part to play, and we all have personal choices to make and free will. I'm hoping that we still have enough humanity left within the human race to decide to move past all the petty garbage that's being thrown at us and as a society currently, and that's going on in our world, and all the fear mongering and all the false flags and all the craziness that's going on, because it's all really a falsehood. It's all fake. This is not reality. The reality is that we are and have the capability of being so much more than what we currently are. And there's been so much of a restriction put in place on humanity from very small groups of within the human race that are trying their darndest currently to control every aspect of every other human being's life on this planet. And it's time that we stand up and say no more. It's time that we take back our freedom. It's time that we stand up and take charge of our free will and become accountable and responsible human beings to ourselves and to each other, and put an end to this cabal of deep state secrecy and control, and remove them from the playing field. Now, I'm not calling for violence. I'm not calling for people to get bloody in the streets. That would be the last thing that I would want. But the time has come to where we as human beings need to make a decision. What do we want to do? Do we want to live as free, ascending human beings and ascend to the next higher levels of spirituality and become more than we are currently, or do we want to become enslaved? And that's the fight we're now facing. That's the battle that we're now dealing with. And I don't think that we've reached a point yet where we can say that we can truly step into the age of Aquarius as it's been described and as it's been prophesied and hoped for quite yet. But I believe we have the hope, and we do have the means, and we do have the ability to make that reality come forward. And that's where I'm pushing for, is let's get away from the current situations of things that are going on in the political world, and get away from all the right side, left side stuff. Where we're going to find balance is somewhere in the middle. And we need to be able to see through the lies and see the truth. And until that happens, what is currently going on is going to continue. And it's time to move past it. It's time to grow past it. We are capable of so much more than we are currently doing. In so many ways, our society is degressing before our very eyes. And it's disheartening to see, but I still have hope that we can do it. I still believe that the human race can pull together and get through this, and we can truly step into the age of Aquarius and truly have a blissful, unified world that is good for all and not just good for some.
Well, that's it. You come together with that intention. Everybody has that intention, and that's kind of like what you create, is a good world for all. So I was thinking about that, like this keeps coming up, a play on words. This week is fear, FEAR, false evidence appears real, except for people play it on the other side, which is the F word, everything, and run. They use it that way instead. But the other thing too that cracks me up, because we always talk about this, about how weird and thin the veil is and all the things that are, more paranormal and strangeness, than there has been. But I always think about the Lord of the Rings, when they're in the final battle and they call it the battle for Middle Earth, and how, you got the Eenses, the trees finally wake up and go, holy crud, what's going on? We got to fight. It's like all these people are asleep and dormant and lethargic and, had the life sucked out of them. And then you've got these little small people, on the battlefield fighting for everything, trying to get other people to work together. I mean, my favorite is Gimlet, I just love him. The dwarf. Toss me. I just think that's so funny. Toss me. Anyway, that's kind of reminds me of like what's going on now, with I think that people sometimes don't realize like how kind of the dark energies have really raised up, kind of like in that movie, before they're starting to kind of really launch into it. And in order to have, for me, in order to me to be in a spiritual battle, one of the things I've had to really, work on is to really, live my life in a good way, in balance with everything, and living with, beings, if you want to call them that, or your friends or your family members. And there's lots of different ways to look at it, but, with the earth beings and the earth and just all the things that are around you, we are supposed to be, caretakers and also responsible for those things that, don't have a voice, I believe, as well. So if you can't do it for yourself, find something. There's got to be something out there you can change for, I always look at the trees. Like, I don't know how we couldn't fight for the trees. Anyway, but that's me. I get kind of nostalgic about trees. All right. I like them very much. All right. So you had said that, a whole other show, after doing this show, would you be interested in coming on another one and talking about other spiritual stuff? You said you could do a 2-hour show about the Chanupa.
Of course.
Okay.
I'd be happy to do that. We'll just keep in touch and we'll figure out a date and time and we'll make it happen.
Yeah, because, now we were going to move through the future and into other stuff that's going on. So is there anything else? So we're probably going to be, the show's going to be ending. We're going to go to commercial, probably about 57 till. So we have about 5 minutes. Is there anything that you would really like to convey, that you can find him at Rainbow People's Medicine Lodge? .org, and he is in Vegas. Is there anything else that you would just like to talk about in closing?
No, not really. What I would suggest is, don't let your heart be troubled and stay true to who you are. Be willing to look in the mirror and see the reflection. Embrace the duality of who you are. That means embrace the dark as well as the light, because that's where you're going to find balance, is somewhere in the middle. Don't be discouraged with a heavy heart. Just be open and be willing to walk through it. And if you need somebody to walk through it with you, some of us are here to do exactly that, and that's what we're here for.
All right. Okay, so we have about 4 minutes. So how about, is there anything else? Do you want to lay down a prayer? You want to think about it for a few minutes and then lay down a prayer and leave us with a prayer?
I can do that pretty quickly on the fly. I never bother to pre-decide what's going to come. I just stay open to what Creator has to say. And with that being said, Creator, I give thanks for this day. I give thanks for this life. I give thanks for all things. I give thanks for Father Sky and Grandmother Moon, and shining down upon us and giving us guidance when we need it. And I pray that all of us find a path to the other side of the negative and embrace the light. Aho.
Aho. Very good. All right, so we're coming into the close, so we're just going to do a couple more things. Remember, you can find Bear at Rainbow People's Medicine Lodge. Do you still have a Facebook page? I know that one of them got hacked in a weird way, or somebody made one.
Yes, I currently still have both of them. The lodge page is still under RPML Ministries,
Okay. And then all the other information that you have, so you can get in touch with Bear if you need his help, or you want to help out, or you want to be part of something good. Do that. This is Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show. You can find us on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And if you go to the schedule under Studio A, the Studio A hosts will pop up. And then you can go to the 1 Eastern Standard Time, and it'll be where the bee is flying towards the flower. And that's where you will be able to find the show and maybe some information about the show. While you're there, do the donate button, get on our archives, the super cheap 6 for all archives for $6 a month. Make sure if you need really good, affordable, solid advertising, get a banner on our site, help support us, and don't forget about our seeds. And if you need to contact me, you can contact me by email which is going to be consciousnessoфeconomics@gmail.com. And you can also find me on Facebook at Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff. And also I have a YouTube channel, Consciousness of Economics and Urban Farm Project, which you can check out. So Bear just put up here on Facebook, rpmlmedicinelodge.org. Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message. Revolution Radio.
You don't see it, do you? How close we are to absolute chaos? The sick ones are sitting on their fat asses, eating and drink themselves into a stupor, polluting the world without a second thought while it goes down the toilet. Nobody wants to do the nasty work. You know, the shit that we all just think about. Most good citizens are just along for the ride and then bitch and moan and complain about everything when it doesn't work out. Not me. Get it done.
Revolution Radio, where we do the nasty work. www.freedomslips.com.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We've got to stop them! They're going to kill us all! See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it. Right! You tell them I'm coming! And hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio! The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio